Mech Conversions, Computer Miniature Models by Clifford. One of the things I liked about the board game was it actually allowed you to figure out the math on your mechs. It allowed you to balance out the weights and the materials. It gave you the entire mathematical equations to do up the thing. Now, mind you, this was the original way back in the 1980s paperback rule book, which came in the box set with cardboard cutouts. The simplest form of the game you could get to start out with. In my case, I took the math and I figured it up and divided the weight I wanted for the mech against what I needed for the frame, and decided what I could do with building things. I had my own mathematical system worked out there in the late 90s. Basically, some of the mechs that I built for recovery work were based on 100-ton legs. That was the basis. I used 10-ton for the internal structure, gave me a 100-ton total weight balance, and then I could put anything up to 100 tons on it. Now, I didn't have to go 100 tons. I could juggle weight out over weapons, armor, and engines any way I wanted to. But using 100 tons, I knew I could pick up just about anything on the battlefield. So what I designed here was a 4-footed recovery mech, one of two. The legs are a Goliath 100-ton, basically assault mech. Alright, beefed up the internal structure on it to the max. But the center frame of the thing is that of a 50-ton Scorpion, mainly because it's a flat top. The flat top allowed me space to work. It widened out the body. The original pre-lawsuit Goliath was kind of a narrow thing. But the way the model builders built the legs, they were an L shape. So I could take a Scorpion body without its rounded legs, glue it on to the two L-shaped sides of the Goliath's legs, and I had a perfectly good flat top mech to work with. Go to my parts box, pick out some scrap pewter, which was a simple L-shaped flash that held parts for the mechs together while they were still in the bubbles. And then an old gear from a printer ribbon. Yes, back in the days before everything went laser jet, we actually had these things called ribbons that had to run from one side to the other, and you had gears in there that would turn them. Strip one of those things apart, bring out a gear set, glue it on top of the mech, glue your pewter to the gear set, and you have a rather impressive looking crane wired up to this thing. Some plain white thread strung around the open end of the gears, run up to the pewter, small notch cut in the pewter to run the string through, bring it down, and taking the bottom cone from a J. Edgar hover tank, gluing the string onto it, gives you what amounts to an electromagnet on the end of the crane cable. This guy is really good for ambushing mechs in a dark alley. Rock the mech side to side to where you get the magnet swinging back and forth. Time it just right to where a mech goes walking past you, and sling the electromagnet towards him while the power is still turned off of the magnet. Aim the thing so you're throwing it at his back, and at the last possible second, turn the power on to the magnet. Magnet clamps onto the back of the mech. What happens to a computer when you magnetize it? Fried the components. You just shut down the mech without damaging any of it. Some of my combat engineer things in actual tabletop games mugged and acquired complete, intact mechs, sans the computer. Computer is the cheapest part on a mech, given what I read on the history book, so yank out the old computer, put in a new one, boot it up, and you've got a perfectly functional mech. for the expenditure of 0 ammunition, for 0 damage, and next to 0 repair time. Here's a sketch that I did. One of my ideas. I show a combination of old model Scorpions, new model Scorpions, and riflemen assaulting a town. The new model Scorpions are my flatbed wrecker design. Alright. Once again, I took and used tongue depressors, popsicle sticks, and molded out a flatbed to put on top of the Scorpion for a recovery vehicle. These are supposed to work with the Goliath crane, which I showed in the last episode, last part of this. The Goliath crane would pick up mech bodies off the battlefield after the battle, put them on the flatbed Scorpions. The Scorpions would carry them back to the MFBs, the dropships, and the spare parts would be unloaded from salvage, put onto the dropship to take back and sell back home, since the factories are not using, because everybody decided to launch preemptive airstrikes on everybody else's factories, so production has stopped. This is an entirely scavenger economy. But the enemy commits their mechs into a battle, what they think is a critical battle. We shoot down the mechs, or we magnetize them. We've got a nice supply of spare parts to sell some other warring house. Nice way to work. I designed a combat engineer unit to take advantage of that situation and to make me some money on the side. Nice. Here's a picture from the 3025 technical readout on the Goliath. This shows the original pre-lawsuit model of the Goliath, which I took and added a Scorpion body to make it wider. The PPC turret and the cooling system there, I guess that's what it is in the middle, disappear because all of that was a single block which glued between the 2 Lego sets on the model. And I put a Scorpion body in there, so that was all extraneous. This illustration, however, shows my method of figuring my budget for building a mech from the ground up. I call this the FECWAP system. Basically, 6-letter abbreviation for the components you need: frame, engine, controls, weapons, armor, and petty cache. You take whatever weight the mech is. Say you've got components for an 80-ton mech. Alright, Goliath was an 80-ton heavy. You take that 80 tons, you divide it by 6. That should give you the number of tons that you can allocate to each department. Alright? You don't figure the tonnage by what you want first. A lot of people do that. They have an 80-ton mech. They want it to do 50 kilometers per hour. They need this engine, which weighs this much, and then they figure it from there. No, I'm basically maxing all of my mechs out. The frame will be built to handle a maximum load on the 80-ton budget of parts that we have available. After that, if I acquire other parts, which would eventually bring the weight of the mech up to 100 tons, the maximum allowed in the game, I have the 20 tons of room to do that with. It's simple. In this case, there are 5 basic body areas that you need to allocate the tonnage to: frame, engine, controls, weapons, and armor. Petty cache is basically a slot for leftover tonnage if you use tonnage to get an engine that you wanted to put in the thing. Any excess tonnage for the engine that you didn't use can be allocated to petty cache and be used on other things. If your armor allocation was a little bit light for the protection you wanted on this thing, take it from petty cache and add more armor to the outside. It's simple, it's flexible, it does better than what the book design gave us.